Testing. Oh, we are on. We are live. Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for coming out. It's a beautiful evening. Hopefully the good evenings will continue. I'm Marguerite Rowe. I'm the State Director for AARP Washington. We are so happy to have you here. I wanted to let you know, if you don't, hopefully you know a little bit about AARP because you are here this evening. But if you don't, let me just tell you a little bit about AARP. So at AARP, we empower people to choose how they live as they age. And really what we're striving for is that people can really age with confidence. Here in Washington State, we have about 850,000 members who we represent. When we go to the halls of Olympia, sometimes the halls of Washington, D.C., the other Washington, we have a small but mighty group of staff, along with the volunteers, some of whom you saw earlier this evening as you walked in the red t-shirts, who really help us with our community programming and our education and woo. Well, that would have been exciting. Education and outreach. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what our priorities are. One of our priorities is really around supporting family caregivers. And by family caregivers, I'm talking about those people who are unpaid caregivers who are caring for their friends or their family or their neighbors. We know that there are about 820,000 unpaid family caregivers in Washington State who are caring for adult loved ones. And so if you add that to those who are also caring for their children, we know that that's a huge number. And so that's part of why we're having this session tonight. But before I go any further, let me introduce to you Daphne Kwok, who is my partner at the national level.
Thank you so much, Marguerite. Good evening, everybody. I'm from the other Washington, the East Coast, Washington, D.C., and I am the Vice President of the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and in my portfolio is the Asian American Pacific Islander audience. And so out of the national headquarters, caregiving is absolutely one of the top issue areas for AARP as an entity. And so we have many, many, many teams throughout the enterprise focused on caregiving, family caregiving, and really making sure that people prepare to care. And so when Marguerite became state director, actually our history goes way back, that we have been colleagues for many, many years. And so when she became state director here, I said, Marguerite, anything I can do to help? And so we automatically started scheming, what can we do? And so from the national level, to be able to help support programming at the state level, to be able to bring you speakers that are on the docket for tonight, Richard Lui and Dr. Kate Zhong, it's our opportunity to be able to share the largesse, the talents, of speakers throughout the country with our state offices. And so this is the role that we play, and we're very pleased to do so. So I'm so pleased to be able to be here. Also for us, it's an opportunity to come and learn. Richard and I have spent the last 36 hours in Seattle meeting with family caregivers, hearing from them what are their needs. And you often hear that people feel they're very alone. And so that's why these kind of programs, we hope that's really helping to build community, helping to build a village that will help support one another. We also had an opportunity to meet with the community organizations that are on the ground, working with supporting and helping family caregivers, and how important that is for all of us as well. So I know you're all going to have a tremendous evening tonight with all the speakers, and I really do hope that you all take away, let's say, 3 gold nuggets from today. And when I come back next time, Marguerite, I'm going to test all these people. What were those 3 nuggets, and how did you use them? Thank you so much.
So again, we're really fortunate to have Daphne with us as well as our other guests. And before I forget, since this will be my moment to chat with you all, let me just say our other priority, because we are a nonpartisan nonprofit organization, in 2024, you'll see us really working to get out the vote. So please make sure the voices of older adults, of caregivers are heard. Okay, so with that, let me just say, we are grateful to be here with you this evening to celebrate and support family caregivers. Together, we recognize our shared connection through the common human experience, the selfless act of caring for others when they need us the most. We also acknowledge that the caregiving journey does not look the same for all individuals and communities. The importance of elevating stories of lived experiences cannot be overstated, and particularly among communities whose stories often go untold, misconstrued, or erased. As we stand in Town Hall, Seattle, we acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, the land which touches the waters of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Puyallup, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. At Town Hall, Seattle, we are in the homeland of Chief Seattle's Duwamish tribe of Indians, the first people of this land. As we collectively seek to build a world where we can all age in confidence, we pay respect to those who have come before us. So with that, let me introduce our MC of the night. We have Jim Dever, who is an Emmy Award-winning host and producer for Evening on King 5. He's also the creator and host of internationally syndicated magazine-style show, Watch This. He is often out in community, as he is a popular auctioneer and MC of community events. He's a dad, he has a caregiving story to share with you of his own, and more importantly, he is an accomplished handstand skateboarder and an Elvis impersonator. Let's welcome to the stage, Jim Dever.
Yeah, I should have brought the skateboard, right? That would have been a lot better. It was tricky enough tonight just navigating the all-gender bathroom. I cannot learn new things at this stage. I just can't do it. You're seeing behind me some shots from my own life. The last few years of my mom's life, we cared for her as she battled dementia. My wife is currently caring for her father in Olympia to help him continue to live on his own. She kind of has put her job on hold and spends about half the time down there, at least, I'd say, at this point. So I know a little bit about the subject tonight, and I'm sure everybody in this room knows a little bit about it too. But what's great about tonight is that you're going to learn even more, and hopefully some really positive information that you can take with you, and just especially to know that you are not alone. And we've got a couple of really great guests who are going to be joining us tonight. In a little bit, Richard Lui. Can't wait to introduce him. But right now, first up is Dr. Kate Zhong. Now, if you take a look at the video screen here behind me, we're going to learn a little bit more about her, and then she's going to come out and share some really useful information.
With an extensive career spanning over 2 decades and a plethora of awards and certificates, Dr. Kate Zhong, a psychiatrist and pharmacologist, has emerged as a trailblazer in Alzheimer's and brain health research. She currently serves as the Director of Innovation and an adjunct professor in the Department of Brain Health, Chambers-Grundy Center for Transformative Neuroscience at University of Nevada, Las Vegas. In her capacity as the Senior Director of the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Zhong led the development of one of the largest clinical trial programs in the country and established the Brain Health Initiative, an innovative platform that founded the 6 pillars of brain health, later adopted by numerous organizations. the initiative was highly acclaimed and received an honorable recognition from Mayor Goodman, who consequently appointed the 12th of May as Brain Health Day in Las Vegas. As the Chief Strategy Officer for the Global Alzheimer Platform Foundation and a founding member of the AARP Global Council on Brain Health since 2005, Dr. Zhong was instrumental in building nationwide Alzheimer's research network to improve and accelerate treatment for dementia. As an adjunct professor at UNLV, she also created Brain Health, a new community education series, and led the innovation program in the Department of Brain Health, introducing Alzheimer, an AI-based digital companion for Alzheimer's patients.
Hello there, it's Amy Swanson.
With that said, Dr. Zhong's connection to the cause of Alzheimer's and dementia extends beyond her professional pursuits. In fact, she experiences firsthand the challenges and emotions involved in caring for a loved one afflicted with these conditions, as she fulfills the role of caregiver for her own mother, who suffers from dementia. However, Dr. Zhong's joyful personality and her ability to bring passion, commitment, vision, and wit to whatever she does play a crucial role in her overcoming the odds and reaching success at all times.
Good evening. How's everyone doing? Great. So glad to be here in Seattle on a beautiful sunny day. Somebody told me that I brought the Las Vegas sunshine to Seattle. I should come here more often. As Jim said, there are a lot of caregivers. I'm one of them. Jim is one of them. Richard, that you will be hearing, is one of them. In fact, there are 11 million caregivers, family caregivers, friends caregivers, unpaid caregivers in the United States who provide cares to their loved ones who are either chronically ill or suffer from dementia. Oops. We know, I know, as I experienced myself, it's a very daunting task to take care of our loved ones. And we also know that caregivers have increased risk for depression, for anxiety, for heart disease, for Alzheimer's. One of the most common questions I got from my patient, the family, is, what can we do so that I don't get Alzheimer's, like what my mom has, like what my dad has? What can I do that my children don't get Alzheimer's? And that's a great question, isn't it? So the answer is yes, there is a lot you can do. That's what I will be talking about today, 6 pillars of brain health. So why brain health? Why is it important? I will share with you a little bit as to what happened to our brain as we age. And I know, as a daughter who has a mother with dementia, I have increased risk to become demented down the road. What are the other risk factors for dementia? Are there any protective factors that we know that we can practice so that we will be more resilient? That's what 6 pillars is about. I will share with you the tips, recommendation, the guideline based on extensive research and with the data that's been validated, sound, so that this is a trusted source I know a lot of times my patient will come to my office and say, oh, I get this information from Google. Should I do this? Should I do that, right? I'm sure that some of you probably done that as well. So I always say that you have to take that with a grain of salt, with the recommendation made by Dr. Google, because it can be all over the map. So therefore, it is very, very important to find very trusted sources. So let's take a look at the human brain. I wonder how many of you have actually seen a real human brain? Anybody? Oh, I saw one hand there. Okay, so you know that our brain is the most vital organ of our body, right? You can have a heart transplant, you can have a lung transplant, you can have a knee replacement, but guess what? You cannot transplant your brain, right? Because you want to keep all the memory of your own. It's a fascinating organ. So let's take a look. This is a short video produced by BBC.
This is the right hemisphere of a human brain, one of hundreds of brains donated for medical research in the UK every year to one of 10 brain banks. Now, if I pick it up, intact, the human brain weighs around 3 pounds or 1.5 kilos. It makes up just 2% of the body's weight and yet consumes 20% of the body's energy. It contains 100 billion nerve cells or neurons. Each neuron has 10,000 connections, making a brain network of 1,000 trillion connections. Now that's more complex than any supercomputer, and yet the brain has an electrical output of just 20 watts, enough to power a very dim light bulb. You can see just how delicate and fragile it is. I'll just point out a couple of features. This is the frontal lobe, the command and control center of the brain, while this projection down here is the temporal lobe, involved in language, emotion, and memory. The brain is a masterpiece of evolution and biology, and yet despite all our scientific knowledge, there's still a huge amount we don't know about how the brain works and why it sometimes goes wrong.
Well, there is a lot that we do know about brain. So what happens when we age? What happens to our brain? Just as the rest of our body, right? So our hair turns gray, our stature may shrink, and we have wrinkles. The brain also shrink. So the number of the neurons, as you have just seen, the nerve cell decrease. The connection between the neurons also is not as sensitive. The region where the brain is responsible for memory is called hippocampus. That is the region that tends to shrink the most as we age. So that explains the age-related memory problems, such as the senior moment. But having senior moment doesn't mean that you have Alzheimer's, you have dementia. That could be part of normal aging. When you age, your brain does become more vulnerable to brain diseases such as Alzheimer's, which is what we call a neurodegenerative disorders. The picture you see on the bottom, the left side is a healthy human slice, and the right one is the Alzheimer's patient's brain. You can tell, right? The size has significantly shrinked. The volume has decreased. Why am I showing you this? Because this is not a medical school lecture, right? But keep in mind, I'll come back to that because there are a lot of things you can do that can increase potentially your nerve cells, that can help to improve the nerve connections, and can even thicken your brain cortex. That is something you can do. So that explains why in Alzheimer's patient, there is significant change of the brain, the shrinkage, the nerve cell decretion, but there's something you can actually do about it. So that's very exciting, right? Good. We talked about age. Age is one of the major risk factors for Alzheimer's, for dementia. So is the family history. In the middle column, I listed 5 points. That's what we call the non-modifiable risk factors. What does it mean? You cannot change your age, and today is the youngest you will ever be. Moving on forward, tomorrow you'll be 1 day older, and you cannot change the genes or the family or ethnicity. We know that African Americans have twice as high of a prevalence of developing Alzheimer's, and Hispanic is 1.5 times compared to the Caucasian counterpart. So those you cannot change. However, the good news is, on the left-hand side is something we called modifiable risk factors. And tremendous studies have been done in the areas. That's pretty much all lifestyle-related, medical condition-related, including, for example, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, right? So those are cardiovascular risk factors or conditions. And there are tremendous studies done showing that by controlling those modifiable risk factors, you can significantly reduce the risk of developing dementia down the road. In fact, the brain health has become a major national initiative. Both the World Health Organization, Center for Disease Control, and Alzheimer's Association have listed the brain health as a national health brain initiative. So that's a long-term national policy, and the caregiving and dementia risk reduction are one of the major focuses. And AARP has really taken a great stride in convening experts, including scientists, doctors, to form the AARP Global Council on Brain Health 8 years ago, because there's just tremendous amount of information out there. So as the council member, we gathered, we reviewed the literature extensively. We have been very selective and very scientific. And in the last 8 years, the Global Council on Brain Health has published 14 reports on the lifestyle choices, on the way how you can be more engaged to become brain healthy. So that's really the foundation of the 6 pillars of brain health I will be talking about. As you walk into the hall on the first floor, you probably have seen quite a few banners there showing the 6 pillars of brain health, which really includes the following. Exercise regularly, which is very crucial. Eat right, eat healthy, and eat smart. The third one is sleep. Manage your sleep has significant role in help you to stay brain healthy. Engage your brain. We know that just like using your muscle, if you don't use it, you lose it. So keep it very active. Be social. Stay socially connected. And finally, managing stress. As you can tell that caregivers, in fact, because of their responsibility while they provide care to their loved ones, all those six areas can be actually impacted by their role. So it's very important for a caregiver to be aware of the situation and to be aware of their own brain health. So let's take a look at pillar number 1, exercise. Pump up your heart is not only good for your muscle, for your joint, it's also very beneficial for your brain health. Studies have shown that people who exercise regularly have significant less risk for developing dementia. Why? Because physical exercise has many benefits. First, we know that exercise will increase the blood supply, the oxygen supply to your brain. And some of you may not know that exercise can also promote the growth of the new nerve cells. Isn't that cool? That's why I was showing you about the nerve and nerve connection. And the study have shown by engaging in physical exercise, your brain size-wise can be increased compared to those who don't exercise regularly. Exercise can also increase the release of many what we call the neurotransmitters or chemicals, such as endorphins and dopamines, that those feel-good hormones. And you probably have heard the runner's high, and that's how you get really feel good. It also decreases the stress hormone, the cortisol, so help you relax and with a reduction of the stress as well. So all this combined really help you to stay both physically healthy and brain healthy. So keep moving, right? Here are some tips to exercise regularly. The recommendation is to get 150 minutes a week of exercise. For caregivers who have limited time or who have tremendous load on their plate, this might sound daunting, 150. But the good news is you don't have to do that all at once. You can break it to 30 minutes a day or even 20 minutes a day. The key is get moving. And there are so many ways of you can get very active physically. Engage in the aerobic exercise, build up endurance, walking, biking, swimming. And don't forget about strength training, because that's very important for you to build up your bone density as well as exercise your balance and flexibility. So remember, what's good for your heart is also good for your brain. Pillar number 2 is eat right. We are what we eat, so eat right to fuel the brain is very important. As we age, our brain goes through oxidative stress, which is really a condition in which that there are too many of the free molecules called unstable molecules called free radical in your system. So if you have seen a slice of apple or avocado turning brown, that's free radical working. And our sun damage, the wrinkles are visible oxidative damage, and the same processes happen in our brain. So food rich in antioxidant can nourish the brain cell, reduce inflammation, and maintain our cognitive health. So there are many brain healthy food or brain healthy diet. I want to just point it out here. One in particular is called MIND diet, M-I-N-D, which is a hybrid between Mediterranean diet and DASH diet. What is really amazing is that the study found for people, they have almost 1,000 elderly people involved in the study. Over the course of 2.5 years, those who stayed on the MIND diet have showed over 53% less chance of developing Alzheimer's compared to those who did not. And also that those people who were on the diet show the brain age, a slowing of the brain aging by 7.5 years. That is quite amazing, isn't it? People said, like, what exactly is the MIND diet? I want to get on with it, and how difficult it is to be on MIND diet. The good news is, it's actually quite, well, not as strict as some other diet. Let me show you. So be smart at what you eat. So the MIND diet consists of 10 groups of good brain food and 5 groups of bad brain food. when you look at that, it's pretty much of a common knowledge, right? So the principle is to load up green leafy vegetables, your kale and spinach and broccoli. And this study in particular found berries is very healthy, very good. So make berry your sweet treat. And do remember to add fish and some other food which are rich in omega-3, such as olive oil and nuts. So my diet also calls for moderation in terms of consumption of whole grain and beans, same with poultry. And some people really like that. You can have 1 glass of red wine per day, according to my diet. And you should limit the consumption of unhealthy fat, including butter and cheese, red meat, fried food, and sweet. Again, that's very common sense. I think that a lot of people occasionally will have a scoop of ice cream, which is okay, right? But I think portion control is very, very important. And don't forget to enjoy food with your family and friends. We know that some of the fondest memory are made around the kitchen table. So for caregivers who have limited amount of time, we suggest they really make the plan in advance so that they can be prepared. They can prepare the food a week in a time so that when they get hungry, they don't go to the In-N-Out. Rather, they will have some nuts to snack on. All right, let's talk about sleep. We spend 1/3 of our time sleeping. So that's about 230,000 hours for someone who's 80 years old. So why do we sleep? Sleep is so critical for us to maintain a healthy brain, a healthy body, and for us to function well. During our sleep, our brain clears out the toxic protein. During sleep, our brain consolidates and forms the memory. And having a good sleep is really good for your overall brain health. So sleep deprivation is really associated with a lot of medical conditions, anxiety, depression, and dementia. Establish a really good sleep pattern behavior is very important. So keep your sleep cycle very regularly. You go to the bed and you wake up at the same time, and keep your bedroom really dark and quiet. And what you do during the day is also very important for your sleep. So get enough sun exposure, be physically active. The recommendation is to get 6 to 8 hours sleep per 24-hour period. Okay, moving on very quickly. So the fourth pillar is engage your brain. You know that our brain can rewire itself, and our brain can make new connections, grow new cells when we learn something new. So for people who stay engaged and they have less chance of developing dementia, there are many things you can try to get your brain engaged. Learning something new, such as language, music, instrument, or just taking classes. I think the fact that you are all here tonight learning something new is a way of engaging your brain. And challenge yourself. Pillar number 5 is be social. We touched upon that briefly. And social isolation has a lot of negative impact on our overall health, including our brain health. That has become particularly prevalent during the COVID period of time, and a lot of studies have done to examine the detrimental effect of social isolation on our overall brain health. So stay social, stay connected with your friends, with your family, with your community is critically important for your brain health. And here are some tips to stay connected socially. One thing I do want to mention that studies show people who are using technology, for example, iPad and text and email, stay engaged, and they have decreased risk for dementia. So that we encourage elderly people to be connected with their family through text, through email, through FaceTime, and whatever you can think about, just stay connected. Finally, managing stress. Chronic stress can do a lot of damage to our body, to our brain. And of course, stress is inevitable. It's how we manage and react to stress. Caregivers do take a lot of toll in terms of their duty and resulting in mentally, physically, and financially burned out. So that this is particularly relevant to our caregivers as well. When we take a look at managing the stress, that's really the 6 pillars I just alluded to, right? Get exercise, eat well, sleep well, stay socially engaged. And what I do want to mention is that do not feel shy. If you feel like you need professional help, do reach out. So, I'm just wrapping up, and I have shared with you 6 pillars with a lot of tips, a lot of potential scientific data. The question is, what can you do? I mean, that might be overwhelming. What can you do today? So take one step at a time. For example, you instead of taking the elevator, I don't even know if there's an elevator here, taking the steps, right? You can just add 1 serving of vegetable, and you can call your friend, you can talk to your family, and take time off just for yourself. And just think about what you can do. Small steps so that you don't feel overwhelmed. And we have a lot of resources on this subject and beyond from AARP and many other organizations. So, 6 pillars. We know that it's never too late to live a brain-healthy lifestyle. And your choice can impact how your brain age. On that note, thank you. I'm going to bring James on stage again.
Thank you, Kate. You probably heard so much there that you want to follow up on with her, and you'll get the chance because we're going to bring Kate back out in a few minutes, and we're all going to have a little chat, and you can have an opportunity to ask any questions you want to, too, because we have some microphones set up. But right now, I'd like to bring up another trusted source, this one from behind the desk at MSNBC and NBC News. We're going to learn a little bit more right now about Richard Lui.
Yeah. 5 years ago, our colleague, Richard Lui, learned of his father's Alzheimer's diagnosis.
He made the choice to step back from his on-camera role to help care for his now 86-year-old father, joining the 53 million family caregivers in the U.S.
I've realized I guess I can care for folks in a way I didn't think I could.
You were in New York, and your dad was in San Francisco, right? You were flying back how many times a month?
Yeah, I was flying back 2 or 3 times a month. My father had done so much for me over my life. There was just no way I would not be there for that journey.
Yes.
I love you too. We're doing the right things when we're taking care of family.
So you rounded up a team of volunteers to work for 5 years on a documentary about young people who care for their parents.
That particular documentary called Sky Blossom was a 6-year journey.
For me, seeing young caregivers in America, aged 11 to 26, out there doing just heroic things at home, but then they're at high school or college, and they look like any other student until you talk to them. And I really wanted to focus on this idea that we do have to look deeper and listen deeper to folks because they're doing some super good stuff. You see all these different parts of the fabric of America doing one great thing, and that's just caring for family. You know, the book was inspired by my caregiving, and so was this movie.
He is the author of a new book about that experience entitled Enough About Me, The Unexpected Power of Selflessness.
I didn't want to write about mass shootings. I did not want to write about hate crimes. I did not want to write about political rhetoric. And instead, I wanted to write something that was productive,
that was practical and that could be on the other side of the ledger. Not the problem, but the solution. And I think when we are in this space of community, how can we be part of providing a practical solution? What we do off camera is what is really defining not only of ourselves, but of the society that we hope that we would become.
Please welcome to the stage Richard Lui.
Where do I sit?
I have no idea.
Okay,
Why don't we sit here for now?
We'll sit here in the light.
So, Richard, you are a good guy. I see this and I see somebody who is elevating such positivity, focusing on the good, focusing on human potential. And I'm wondering what drew you to tell those kinds of stories, specifically the ones we're seeing in your film, Unconditional.
For the journalists that are, first of all, great to see everybody here, and hello, Seattle. Love this city, being a West Coaster, a person of the Pacific Coast. I didn't know that answer, actually. I think that as I've thought about that very question over time, and I think we all have that question personally about why do I do some of the things I do, and we don't have the answer. And, you know, as I have done and chosen the stories sometimes not, but I do choose my questions as a journalist. And I think that as I look back now, 10 years ago, if you asked me this question, Jim, it would be a different answer. But it's because my parents made certain choices without shaking their finger at me. Because they could have shook their finger at that, by the way, they did. My dad was a pastor. He shook his finger at me all the time about this great good Lord and Jesus and everything else, you know. He shook his finger a lot. And my mom, being a choir girl since she was 7 years old in Los Angeles, and sung next to Shirley Temple Black, told me she sung next to her when she was 70. I was like, Mom, you're burying the lead, right? For those, she didn't tell me, Jim, until she was 70. Like, oh yeah, blah, 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 I was singing at church, and this lady called Shirley Temple Black stood next. I was like, Mama, Shirley Temple? Wow. So why sometimes is a very deep and unknown answer. And I think the choices that they made and the way they communicated it to me over our lifespan and our time here was the right cadence, the right notes for me to listen. But I didn't know that, as we all have been through this, right? You didn't hear the music until later, right? And it was later.
Well, they taught you well, and I'd love to let everybody see a little bit of the film that I had mentioned. It's a personal film. It tells other people's stories of caregiving, but also it tells Richard's story of caregiving. I think the first clip from California is early in your journey with your father and his dementia. And so if we could roll that clip, that would be great.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
The father I've known has been disappearing.
Moses.
Still my dad, but our relationship is definitely changing.
Babel.
At age 15, when you were living on Jackson Street.
Oh, yeah.
I went to Cumberland Presbyterian Church, and I was baptized there. It was the greatest blessing, joy in my whole life.
There it is.
Yeah, it's a beautiful one.
Little by little, Alzheimer's. It's basically just taking away little bits of his brain.
Egyptian.
All right.
And maybe a little bit of me too. Here we are at dinner with my aunts and uncles about 8 years ago. And you can see him, he seems totally fine. But the youngest of his 12 siblings pulls me aside and says, he's forgetting our names. And not too much later, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And that started the road.
We'll look at your mother. She's going to wait for us here, because we're coming back.
Okay. When I saw you, please join to me, Richard.
Good to see you, too.
I love you so much.
Love you, too. That's okay.
You don't want come.
He was mid-stage at that point.
I think we got him here.
All right, let's go.
For my mom, it was taking care of an 84-year-old child, 24 hours a day. She needed my help because he kept on wanting to leave and open doors and wandered in streets. Keep on eating Subway sandwiches or going buying donuts. He drove straight through, all the way through that back wall. You know, he liked to poop everywhere, had to clean up his poop. And he had the strength to open up drawers and turn on stoves and try to open cans with a fork. Boom, 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 boom. And he did it.
He did. Wow. So, such a personal story, and yet I'm so grateful you were able to share it with us. What is it like to be both a caregiver and a filmmaker, a storyteller at the same time, to live inside that story, and yet to look at it as something you needed to communicate as well?
So you know this, Jim, being a journalist, this is not what we I'm not the type of journalist that likes to be in front. And my mentor actually told me 3 years ago, start editing this thing. We need to do it. And I would not have listened to her. Jean Hsien, who is the board of governors of documentary at the Academy, which for those of you who watch the Oscars, we had some great, nominees this year. But when she talked and she said, do this, I was like, okay, we don't do this to be in front. Like showing pictures is, I'll share it with you, but this was a little weird. And so we did it. And I did it because I wanted to show that I, like anybody else, didn't know the answer. In that, this is one of my favorite parts of the film. And we spent 2 years editing the film. And the reason why it was 2 years is, as you know, well, many of you know in this room, that caregiving is an unknown answer. People say, well, what are you going through? Well, number one, you're thinking, how much time do you have? Right? Exactly. Number two, what am I going to say during that time? Because I'm going to be thinking about the answer as I answer it. And so when I went through that, Jim, it was sitting in that bus stop. I love that shot because we do that in caregiving. We sit by their side as we go from one place to another. And there are people around us, and you saw it in that scene, right? They're like, why is my dad giving away gum to everybody? He loved to, if it was here, y'all would get a piece of gum right now. Start chewing, get ready, even if you don't chew gum. And I love that scene because it is what I would do and what we all do and what we all will do if we haven't gone through it yet is sit by the person that we care for so much and feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. Like I see that shot, like when I'm sitting at the bus stop and I see my discomfort, and that's okay.
Yeah, because it's all uncharted territory. It's all new.
That's right.
I know from my experience, you just always feel like you're not quite getting it right. And
not good enough.
You're never good enough.
Yeah.
And I noticed that when I watched your film, that because he follows 3 different experiences, one in Alaska, Virginia, your family's experience, and every one of them has something that you will find very familiar if you see this film. That sense that we're doing our best, we're dead tired, we do it for a day, we finally lay our head on the pillow, and guess what? It's almost time to pick your head back up and do it all over again, and you never quite feel like you're getting it right.
And we want to show up with our makeup right and our shirt ironed. All of us do. And I was so grateful to the families in the movie that said, I don't need to show up with my shirt ironed. And I don't need to, I'm not sure, I'm ready to, I'm about to leave this world. And when those families decide to share that with us, because it's so instructive. As I often say, we spend so much time gathering and celebrating when we arrive, we should do the same when we leave. Right?
That's a good way to look at it, yeah.
Because it is just as clarifying about why we're here, and when we see another one of us versus a rabbit or a cat. Those are also special moments, and seeing those pictures bring me back every time, and I hope that never changes.
I don't think it will. And you tell, as I mentioned earlier, not just your own family's story, but other families' stories as well. How did you decide whose stories you wanted to tell? And maybe that could be a good way to lead us into the next clip.
Sure. Now, in the film, which we're very grateful, it became Oscars qualified, and it was shown at the White House, it was shown in Congress and the United Nations, and if anybody's going to be in Brussels next month, come on by. Come on by, we're all going to be together. I really wanted to bring all the horses to water so they could at least have the opportunity. And whether you actually, as all of us know, you bring a lot of people in your lives to water. Whether they drink or see it or take a sip or whatever, you all agree. Like, you really want to force it upon them, but you cannot. But if you can get them to water, and so I am so grateful that we are in a space today, Jim, where the world is hearing this conversation about caring for other people. And the strange thing about the film, which I was talking to my mentor about, which is I am an Asian, you can't tell this, an Asian American man taking care of my father, and you've got a 50-something, and you got a 30-something white family in Alaska who is an Army Ranger living through PTSD and TBI, and a great wife who's taking care of her husband. How are we alike? And why should we be in the same story? This is the Bouchatz family from Alaska.
I'm going to an intake appointment with the TBI clinic to do what's called a roundtable consult with a bunch of doctors in the TBI clinic. This is my second roundtable, my first up here. I bring her along to fill in the gaps.
Well, so this is actually my first time doing one of these.
But it's you together doing this.
Yeah.
And you're going to a very difficult environment.
Yeah. I'm sort of hoping to have a chance to just weigh, like, counterbalance. That's really like a major part of the caregiver thing, right? That he has a perception of his injuries and he has a perception of how he deals with stuff. And then I have a totally different perception. For example, we did an intake appointment once with the doctor who asked him, like, do you have nightmares or do you have flashbacks? And he said, no. And I was like, oh, I'm really sorry, but yes, you do.
There might be things that you need to discuss that you haven't discussed, and those get missed, and that hurts. Yeah. But at the same time, it's also a place where potentially your spouse, your caregiver, can learn more about where you're hurting and how they can help.
Could she say something that might hurt you?
Yes, but I could also say something that could hurt her, you know?
It's hard to look in the face of your trauma. The hardest thing is watching the emotional toll. I can't fix that. I can't influence that at all. I can put him in front of resources. I can go with him to appointments. I can, remember to make the phone call that he can't remember to make, or put it on his calendar so that he can do it. I cannot control how he feels about stuff.
That's great. I cannot control how he feels about stuff. I mean, it's great to admit some of the shortcomings that every caregiver is going to face. What I love about that is that you have a young couple, seemingly fit. From the outside, people could see them and not realize, not see the caregivers among us, in a sense, because they're everywhere.
So guess how, they're in the age or in the structure of being millennial. How many millennial or younger folks do we have here? This includes the children that are in, okay, there's one. There are more, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, okay, 9, 10, 12.
Which letter in AARP stands for millennial, though, yes, I guess.
Yeah. All right, you're throwing shade now is what you're doing. The reality is, if we have 53 million Americans, and I believe it's 60 million based on my modeling after the last 5 years, but if we have 53 million, and there are 25 million millennial or younger like them that are going through a caregiving journey, then it's not the narrative of you and me being the sandwich generation, the 50-somethings or whatever that are going through, or 60-somethings that are going through caregiving. And that's the misalignment, and the purpose of this film and the film before, Sky Blossom, is actually to show that all the stereotypes that we bring into the conversation of caregiving are incorrect. There are 5 million boys and girls like Rihanna. I don't know if you remember in the beginning of that. Rihanna in Long Beach, California, caring for her father. And the first film, Sky Blossom, is to break down that very idea that this is an age thing. It is. It's an all-age thing. 5 million children, 17 and younger, that are family caregivers. 25.4 million that are college age, millennial and younger. So the opportunity is to dig into the ecosystem that we're all living through this, and I'm sorry to bring up and say it this way, we're all living through this arc of humanity that is so similar. And this is why I believe and why I chose the Bouchat's family, because on the face of it, right, Jim? You would not, as a journalist, put my family and their family together. I wouldn't.
Yeah, it doesn't look like part of the same story, but
you don't like me, do you? You don't like me. No, right. It doesn't, on the surface, it doesn't seem to sync.
Right.
But when you watch the movie, which we worked on for 7 years, the reason why it took that long is because I realized, I don't know their age. Amy makes fun of me because she says, when we first started the project, I look like my producer. My producer's 27 years old. And that 7 years later, now I look my age, blah, 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 blah. But this is about caregiving, right? And I'm glad whatever it is the outcome is that. But my point is that we are so alike. like Amy and Luke that you saw in the film, and their children who are part of the child caregiver space. They give so much in the movie, and so I'm so grateful for them being so honest.
Yeah, and that every one of these stories can learn from every. If you could get all these folks in the same room, they could definitely give each other information that would be useful, despite the fact that it looks like at first they couldn't possibly have anything in common. But there are a lot of commonalities to caregiving. Tell me a little bit about behind the scenes. You had mentioned to me earlier that the crew is pretty unique that you worked with.
Yeah, we were very intentional about the way we did the film over the years. And close to 80% of us in the core team, caregivers.
So they're not just observing this story. They know what to look for.
Yeah.
Because they're seeing it themselves in their own lives.
Yeah. And the authenticity, I don't ever use that word very loosely, but I wanted them to, to be honest, I wanted them to feel like their story is being told. Right? They're all journalists. They're all filmmakers. I wanted to say, you're a caregiver. This is your story. And the other figure, we had 100% female crew. In my business, we don't have a lot of women working in the industry. 94% of the donated dollars, because this is a not-for-profit film, 94% of the donations were used towards spending related to underrepresented groups along the way. It wasn't a huge budget film. This was a $1.5 million film. Half of that $1.5 million, by the way, was pro bono. And in our industry, there's no such thing as pro bono, right? They're just, you don't do pro bono. But when we would call up the camera rental places, we'd say, we're doing this thing. Oh, let me see how we can help you. Let me talk to the boss. And almost always, Jim, it was, okay.
That's amazing.
We're going to do this.
Yeah, it's kind of unheard of, really.
Bravo to them.
Yeah. Why don't we get to the other, the third leg of the stool of the movie? It's a couple in Virginia.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing different faces of caregiving. One is elderly. Another one is by injury. That one's very touching because, as we mentioned earlier, it's almost an unseen malady. And then the third one is a woman who is suffering a devastating illness.
That's right. We go to Virginia.
Okay.
Hi, happy birthday.
Howdy.
Jody coats. Look what you did, Joe.
Look what Jody did.
My coat to broke it.
Happy birthday, dear Colleen. Happy birthday to you. Yay.
In Charleston, we basically knew no one. Here, they didn't miss a beat. Every single body in this neighborhood ended up embracing us and accepting us.
It is about Kate, but it's also about Shane. He needs support too. We just have to remember that he's going through his own journey with this as well. Nobody wants to think about what your kid's life will be like without you. So I think it's really important for us to let her know we're gonna be here. We're not going anywhere. We're gonna carry on and do what you would do.
We need the village. And right now we have the village.
So Kate made sure to have that village ready for Shane. Such a selfless act, really, that she and her family, her friends, her neighbors really rallied the troops. They knew Kate was the one who was ill, but they all knew that Shane was the one who was going to need the support. The caregiver was going to need the support later on. How common is that, though? I think there are probably a lot of people here who are saying, geez, I wish somebody would see me the way they see this family and see the support that they need?
That was the story of love. These are all stories of love, but I call it the love story because Shane, in the film, in the beginning you see one Shane, at the end of the film you see another Shane, and Shane and I talked like 3 weeks ago, and I didn't know after, spoiler alert, I mean, she passed, I guess it's now a year ago this month, and I was so worried about Shane and their son Matthew. He's the youngest I interviewed as a caregiver, 5 years old. And they were like, Richard, don't interview him. Don't. And I was like, no, we're going to sit down. And the reason why I was so confident about sitting down with Matthew in the film, and you saw a little bit of him for a second, was because I'd already interviewed Rihanna, I'd interviewed Dylan, I'd interviewed Huck and David. They were, 9, and so he was youngest at 5, and I said, there's something about caregiving when I've interviewed, because I did go into it thinking, putting on your producer hat, not your host hat for a moment, you go like, don't do that. This is very difficult for Matthew. He's about to lose his mother, and he's 5 years old. And I said, I've already interviewed, and I thought the same thing, but there's something about caregiving. It is I use this a lot, and I don't use it loosely, but it is the ketchup of society. It's good with everything. It makes everything good. Caregiving, as much as it is difficult, is the one way we all can all of a sudden just go to the core of who we are. I don't care if you make $1 billion. I don't care if you're 6'2" or 4'2". If you are 500 pounds or 5 pounds. I don't care if you are from Olympia or if you are from McMinnville. We are all the same. It is the ketchup of what we live through. And so when it came to the Thomas family, it was amazing because they showed that very idea again, but they did it because it was a love story, and he was about to lose the love of his life. And when I talked to him 3 weeks ago, he's dating again. And I know it is difficult, but they would joke, the two of them, when we would talk off camera, you better start dating when I'm gone, right? And it was a little uncomfortable, but uncomfortable at the same time.
Yeah.
And I love that because Kate was the alpha in the relationship. And she, therefore, was the primary caregiver for herself. And Shane was also the most vulnerable individual about that reality. And the fact that he shared that, we didn't, in the clip, we didn't show all of what he said, but that is all of us who are caregivers. When we can reach that vulnerability, it is a different way of expressing strength. And there's so much that Shane exhibited along the way that, so he's also a veteran. And we didn't bring it up at all in the film. And because that wasn't his primary role, his primary role was that he was a lover of his wife. That was his primary role.
It's an important role.
And he was so good at it that he was willing on camera to express so much anguish. I mean, I went back and I looked at it, and that was the only interview. If you watch the film, that was the one interview I did not do because I got called to, my father was in and out of the hospital at the time, and he had a bout of severe pneumonia, and all of you have been through this, we thought it was that day. So I flew and I said, okay, team, you got to do this interview. And my team stepped up. They knew the energy, because much of it's about energy in these interviews, right?
Right.
And they brought the energy, they asked the questions, and he was so honest about it. So yeah, Shane is a great example of a male caregiver that does not fit the stereotype. Stereotypes are often wrong, as you know.
Yes, thank goodness. It'd be a boring world if they were all stereotypes were always right. So I just want to ask you, now, when you were caring for your father, you were also in your day job anchoring from a studio in New York. How people who have jobs or have other commitments in their lives are probably wondering, how did you go? And your father was in San Francisco, back and forth, and you spent good quality, long stretches of time with your dad and with your job. Did you feel like either were suffering as a result of the other?
Well, I thought I was going to lose my job because I knew when my dad gave me the call that said, I have Alzheimer's. The neurologist said I have Alzheimer's. And as a news person, I was anchoring. I was working like 30-day stretches, blah, 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 going out to do breaking stories in Ferguson and Baltimore, and my boss could depend on me. And as soon as I knew that my dad gave me the call, I've got it confirmed. And I didn't say it at the time, but my brain was like, well, I got to go. I got to go. But wait, I got this job. What am I going to do? My job is like 7 days a week. So I went in, I said, okay, I wrote my boss, Yvette. I said, Yvette, can we have a quick talk? I've got to, talk about my future. And my approach is that I always write the email that I'm going to send after the big meeting so that I know what the objective is of that meeting. And the way I wrote that email before I met with her was, thank you for understanding. I will reach out to you after I'm done taking care of my father, and it was good working with you. And she's the one that hired me. And I went into the room, and she says, and I tell her what the situation is, and she's a consummate journalist, no opinion, get it done. She's got her glasses on, she's looking at her computer. You've all been through this. You walk in, she's not looking at you, and then I tell her, my dad has Alzheimer's, I want to take care of him. And she drops her glasses, looks at me. That's already a move. All right, great. And she says, Richard, I'm taking care of my mother in Florida as well. And I was like, if you're not a believer already, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. I mean, I had no idea. I was like, and she said, let's figure out what we can do. And I said, what are you saying? And so she said, let's come up with a list of 4 ideas each. She started breaking out her reporter's notebook immediately and started writing. And then she said, let's meet in a week again. We met in a week. We came up with 4 ideas. I didn't have to, she said, when you're ready to pull the trigger, we'll pull the trigger. 6 months later, I said, Yvette, we got to pull the trigger. My dad's hit that stage. And she didn't have to do that. I made her job more difficult. There's no such thing as a part-time news anchor. No, there isn't. But what I took away from it is that Yvette Miley represented the ability of all of us in all of what we do in our work to bring creative kindness to what we decide on. Because in that moment, which she had no idea, she decided, let's think twice about what is the dominant culture in our industry. And we can do that.
We can all do it, whatever occupation we're in, whatever line of work. It can be done if people are willing to work together and make it happen. I'm going to bring Kate back up.
Let's do it, Dr. Kate, yes.
We're going to give all of you a chance to ask some questions if you'd like to. Kate? This seat in the middle can be yours, and there is your microphone.
Thank you.
Oh, now I feel like Oprah. I'm not quite as well paid, though, to be honest. Would anyone like to kick off with a question? We've got microphones up front if you'd like to. Otherwise, we're just going to keep chatting amongst ourselves, which is fine too. Did I see somebody give a little wave? Yeah.
Hello, thank you very much for this being I'm a caregiver of my 27-year-old daughter. I just want to say, caregiving is the thing that makes me feel most human.
Oh, yes.
So we talked about stress, loneliness, all symptoms of the human condition.
Yeah.
I want to say the power of selflessness is the power of being a free, conscious human in full. I do have a question for you.
Oh, no, I already like what you said. You don't say anything else. Yeah, that's good, that's good.
Quit while you're ahead.
That's already great. That's already super.
There was a moment for you when you realized your father could not live in our world, yes? Mm-hmm. And what I heard you saying was, maybe when you were talking with your boss, was the moment when you couldn't live in that world, when you couldn't live in our world. Yeah, the world of expectations. Mm-hmm. I think is that a fair representation of what?
That is very fair.
Yeah, of what you were doing.
Yeah, it's very fair. Absolutely.
So I just want to thank you for showing an example. I did it in my own life.
Yeah.
Of that creative moment when you it's an act of revolutionary love. The choice of people over things that Martin Luther King asked us to try and do. In a way, subversive. No?
I hear you. I hear you.
So maybe raging against the machine is just changing diapers.
Yes. I love all of your allusions to culture. I was ready. What's your name, by the way?
Ed Solsing. I'm on the executive board of SEIU 775, the local caregiving.
Very good. Yes. Yeah.
That's great.
So when you were talking about this very idea, I mean, you brought a lot of good ideas, but you said you were the best human, right? This showed you caring for your daughter that, the most human, which to me, what I often will say is that I'm not the best human in the room. Many will vouch for that. But however caring and going through the journey, through the mission, I'm the best human that I've ever been. And I didn't realize that until after. But that's okay. And I know it's so difficult for so many caregivers along the way. But you express the very idea that there is great joy despite difficulty. There's great humanity. And that's what you're saying. And these are really crazy words for me to be saying out loud, by the way. I say every time I hear myself saying this. But it's the reality, right? It is a truth. And so when you said that, I was like, oh, we're brothers from another mother. I love that.
I have a question for you, Kate. You talked about the 6 pillars, which I love. But I'm thinking, I'm not good at doing a lot of things all at once. I would like to get to all 6 pillars, but if I had to start with one tomorrow, which one would it be and why?
Everyone's different, so if you were asking me what I would do, I would say sleep. Right? We all sleep.
I'm actually pretty good at that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
you might get a little example of that in a second. So I'm up past my bedtime right now.
Well, you are probably one of the few lucky ones. We have seen many people, even in their 40s, 30s, they experience a lot of sleep difficulties. There could be many reasons. Medication could be one, of course, stress, and then the jet lag. So there are many, many reasons. Even apnea, for example, sleep disorder, right? So I usually tell people that it can be difficult for you to really get into a very healthy eating habit overnight if you have not been a good eater, so to speak, or if you have not been used to exercising regularly. But we all sleep. You all go to bed at night. So that might be something you can take on as a first task to really think about what you can help yourself sleep better, potentially sleep longer with better quality. The second thing, if I may add, is just pick up the phone, talk to your family, talk to your friends, get on the Facebook, get on social media. You might just spend 5 minutes, and that helps you with overall social engagement as well.
There are so many benefits to having social engagement, like we saw in your film,
Yes.
about having the village to help lift a family in need at the time of their greatest need. And then you have these other benefits, these mental acuity benefits of just being able to interact with people. Not everybody has an easy time of doing that, though, so sometimes you have to push yourself outside your comfort zone a little bit.
Well, that's really important. I must say that if you're going to socially engage, and this is good at any point in our journey, is to engage, and not only because we live in a very, shall I say, difficult time, where there's a lot of celebrated ire towards others, is that, I don't know if I've ever said those words together, by the way, celebrated ire towards others.
It sounds like your
That's
next
a journalist
album.
talking.
I have no idea what I'm saying right, but I mean, the idea that when we engage is to engage in that which we don't agree with. And I think that idea of social engagement, which you brought up in your pillars, is yes, engage in what is comfortable, but also engage in which you're not comfortable with. And that, I think, is where we can get into other ideas of challenging our brain to break down the structures that we have fortified for so long.
Yeah. You never feel more alive than when you've stepped a little bit outside your comfort zone.
I disagree. I'm joking, I don't know. Yeah.
Should we move over here and end this quarreling?
Yes. Go Mariners.
Go Mariners. I'm a season ticket holder, by the way, so that's actually pretty cool to say to me. Anyways, I am caring for 3 people, besides my 2-year-old granddaughter that I chase around about 60 hours a week. Trying to find the balance and all that, it's really hard. I have one cancer patient that I'm medical power of attorney for, that I was one of her best friends from high school. I'm in my 50s, so it's been a while for me since I've been in high school. Maybe a while longer for some of the rest of the folks out here. And then I have my parent-in-laws that have multiple medical disabilities, diabetes, hypothyroidism. They're homebound, so I have to do their driving and all of that. And just want to know, are there other people out there in the same boat that are trying to balance everything, and how do they get the resources they need when they're in that situation?
Yeah, you don't feel alone, do you?
I'm spinning a lot of plates.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I go to 81 Mariners home games too.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna throw that out there.
That's a full schedule.
And they need caregiving. I'm joking.
They actually do.
Yeah, I mean, she's asking all of us who can feel. What's your name?
I mean, there's just so much planning and scheduling.
I mean, what's your name?
My name is Amy.
Who feels what Amy's going through in here? Yes.
Thank you. I'm glad that I'm not glad that everybody's out there feeling this way, but I'm glad that I'm not the only one. And thank you.
I can share a resource right now if you'd like to know.
Thank you, Jim.
I don't know if this will answer all your questions, but I wanted to let everybody know in the room at some point, if you go to AARP.org/caregiversWA, Caregivers Washington, You can get a lot more information on resources for caregiving. You can find a lot of resources right down in the lobby of this very building tonight. And you can also ask these spectacular experts anything you'd like to know,
Not an expert, but I was curious, Amy, how many events like this have you been to?
I'm a first-time offender.
You know what?
Thank you, New Day Northwest, for tuning me into this, by the way.
Yeah.
5.
You know what? I was surprised too. My first event, I thought I was at a Baptist revival because I have never hugged or talked to people so emotionally in my life. I'm not a Baptist. I'm a Presbyterian, be clear. But I'm just saying, I joke because I'm saying coming to these, it's safe, right? You're not going to get anybody in these environments, Well, you will on occasion, but the majority of folks, right? You already heard the claps that said, I gotcha. I'm in the shoes you wear. And I was surprised when I used to go to these events early on. I was like, wow, this is really, I'm not alone. And they're really open to sharing this. And I was shocked. And
I'm also starting my own, personal health journey, trying to get a healthier body and a healthier mind and all that. So I realized a few months ago that if I continue to eat the way I do and not sleep the way I do, that I'm going to be the one needing the care and I won't be able to give.
Yes.
And it is very rewarding. It is very stressful, but also very rewarding to be a caregiver.
Yes, it is. And that's why Dr. Cate's pillars are so important. Like I was the same way. Like in the film, I purposely, there's like, Richard, you don't look so good in that picture. I was like, yeah, that's because I was not so good. Put that in. And that, as you know, were you just sharing it with all of us? Yeah, I'm with you on that. There are days that we are absolutely laid out, right?
Yeah, I'm exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Laid out. Just.
I'm getting an MRI in 2 hours, so I mean, it's good times.
Got a question back here, too.
It can be specific to dementia, but I'm curious in your film. Hi, my name is Peter on the way back.
Are you standing up?
I'm not standing up.
Okay.
Would you like me to stand up?
There we go. Yeah, there we go. Oh, we see you now.
My question is when, caregiving is an active, constant thing, and the question I want to see in the people you worked with, how did you see techniques, approaches, success in how caregivers left the caregiving and actually went back to being the child or the parent or just the friend of the person you were with? Because a lot of times the caregiving can overtake, where you go in and every time you sit down with them, I do it right now with my parents because I run their bills, and so every time I walk in, I'm on my bills, and that's a big part of the conversation. And it's obviously they do suffer from dementia. So the question is how do you stop that? Have you seen people successfully, techniques, approaches where they go back to just being the kid?
I would say journalistically, and Doctor can add in the medical expertise, but journalistically, what I've seen in my interviews is that you're never going to be what you were before, typically, and that you grow into another whatever it might be. And so for me, with my parents, and my role was. It all varied because there's 4 siblings. Mine typically was how to get us all together, I guess I would say. And I don't know if that was what I wanted it to be. But as we all know, I mean, it can't be what it was. I think we're built as humans to want things to go back to what they were. But let's just relish what it was. And the reality is, because as I was saying earlier, we arrive with great relish. We should leave with great relish. But when we leave, it's a different conversation about being relished. And in my interviews with the Carter family, the Jimmy Carter family, and Rosalind Carter, I think, articulated this very idea that you ask, is that we are 4 types of people. And we all go through these 4 types of people. We are either caregivers, We were caregivers, we will be caregivers, or we're caregiver recipients, right? And when Rosalind Carter passed, when the Carter family asked me to be the only interviewer of that family, I knew that they were saying caregiving is very special, right? It's a very unique existence and journey, and I was very humbled by it. And the reason why I bring that up is because I really respected what she tried to do 50 years ago in this country, which is to bring up the idea of mental health and caregiving and bring the two together. 50 years ago. Can you imagine the Greek that they thought she was speaking, or the Chinese you thought she was speaking? I'm Chinese, so I can say that. Can you believe that? And so the idea that, which you asked about, will we ever go back? I don't think we will. We'll have a portion of it. And yeah, you go there and you said you're the bills, you do the bills? Yeah. And so my older brother was the bills guy. And that was not part of the new objective in my family about figuring out the bills. He decided he'll take a step back. That's okay. Like he's not part of the caregiving conversation right now. That's okay. Because we're all built differently.
Yeah, coming from a family that every person kind of took on a different role, I definitely saw that. My sisters, with my mother, my sisters were hands-on in there every day. My one brother is good with money, so he was the one who came in and took care of all that. I was the guy who lived out of town, so I would fly in to try to give everyone else a break. You know, that was my role, is to show up and be the court jester and like, hey, everybody, go take a little vacation, take a nap. So it's great when you can not only have a team put together, but also have really clearly defined roles based on your strengths as well. I think we
do we have one more question?
Have one more question over here.
Thank you.
That's a great segue, actually. Oh, is this on? Yeah. Okay. It's a great segue to my question, and from a fellow Presbyterian and a fellow former journalist. So.
And go Baptist as well, by the way. I'm not bad. I know we're in one of those places.
My dad is a Baptist minister, so. I am now a year and a month into the caregiving journey, and I'm one of 5 siblings, but I'm the only one who's local. And just this afternoon, in fact, I was feeling the need to talk about the burden of caregiving and of being the only one who's here and dealing with it all. But I was writing out this document because we're about to meet with an elder care, because we just got a diagnosis last month, so now we know it's neurodegenerative and it's not going to improve. So we're like, okay, got to figure this out. And I don't know, I need language. As a former journalist, I need the language to figure out, because I had to delete everything because I knew my dad was going to see it. How do we talk about the burden of caregiving without making them feel like they're a burden? Because I couldn't use that word. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't let him see this. So is there language that you can share? And I'm going to run back so I can take notes to my seat. But if we can just talk about the language of acknowledging the burden of caregiving, truly acknowledging that and dealing with it, because it's got to be dealt with. I cannot do this on my own, but without making my parents feel like a burden.
What's your name?
Susanna.
Suzanne, come back. I'm joking. Yeah. I think journalist to journalist is that find shared cultural moments. Find the film that you might like about caregiving, for instance, and there are now a handful of 5 or so that you can. So it's about understanding a lot all at once: change of roles, emotional depth, difficulty, burden, new joy, new sadness, new humanity. This is a lot of things all at once. And I would say that to get to that cultural space where you can actually hint towards the conversation you're talking about is to find, so it might be music. I already brought up film. It might be events like this. What if you were to, it's your father, is that right?
My mom.
Your mom.
My dad and I are caring.
Your mom is to come to an event like this together. This might be a month for step one, but it might be like a movie at home. So you're not the person that's describing this new world order. Because, right, for all of us, it's a new world order, and it's kind of tough to redraw the world in a moment after a diagnosis. And so how do you ease into that new world order? And that's to share the cultural moments that are on the fringes, but really at the core at the same time, right? So I would try to find the cultural moments you can share first before you say anything about the burden and the difficulty and the choices you're going to make. Because at the same point, like the parallel to me at least is that when I made the decision to work part-time, I realized I was going to make a decision that my dad may not even know that I'm going through the sacrifice. And it was this stretch of being too selfish, as I often say, versus being too selfless. And it's not really those ends, it's the stuff in the middle. And you being able to bring that reality of the situation for yourself and for your loved one, your mother, is find the cultural moments where you're not all of a sudden the person that has to say, this is the new reality, right? Because that's a huge role change all of a sudden. And so to have a shared cultural moment, little by little, and you'll see the openings and you'll bring it up, right? You'll, especially as a journalist, you'll just see it. I think that's a nice beginning to it before you actually have to use those words. Show, as we're taught as journalists, don't tell.
And there's no need for it to happen overnight. You can give yourself the grace and the people around you and your mother the grace of letting her come to it in her own time and understanding what you're all dealing with too. I find that everybody's at a different speed, everybody's at a different pace in this whole caregiving journey. I think that's important to remember too, that sometimes you have to allow, I have two brothers and two sisters, and we had one brother who was saying, oh, mom's not remembering things because she just never listens, you know? But, you know, the cognitive tests were saying otherwise, but he just needed to live in his reality for a little while. He came around, and everybody eventually understands what their role is with something like this. But I think if there's anything we've all learned tonight is that you're never going to do it right. So don't even, you're never going to do it perfectly. You'll do it as right as you can. There's no perfection in this whole journey. It's all about just doing the best you can and giving yourself some slack to realize that nobody gets it 100% right, ever.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that, when you said that, and as well as what you were saying, during COVID, we saw all of the ugly stuff of our society come out. All the cracks, all the nicks in what we are as a country came out, right? But and the same comes true in caregiving in the family. All of the cracks become really obvious, all the nicks in what we are, right? But stay on target. Stay on target. This is about your mom and her next step. And the nicks and the cracks are real, but this is where then you realize the nicks and cracks are just nicks and cracks. Because the real objective is your mom. Like with COVID in our society and as journalists, we were talking about how, look at all these other cracks in what we are. I was like, but they're real. But stay on target. There's something that is about to wipe us out. So for you, I know that all the other things in the family, and for all of us who've gone through it, right, all the stuff comes out. But we stayed on target.
Yes. And Dr. Kate, I just have one more thing to ask of you. So there are a lot of stressed out people, maybe even in this room, I don't know. The caregiving journey can be so difficult on people. And the tips you were giving us and the research that you were sharing is great for long term and hopefully to give ourselves the best shot at healthy brains in the future. What about right in the moment? Because these caregivers are stretched to the limit. What's most important for them to keep track of while they're taking care of other people? What's the best way to take care of yourself?
I think one of the most important things is be aware what you're experiencing. Because you have to remember, you have to take care of yourself first. Without your own health, physical health, mental health, cognitive health, you cannot provide proper care to your loved ones. So this is a time we always talk about you should allow yourself, you come first. I think a lot of us have difficulties doing that. And it's very common for the caregivers to experience sense of guilt. I don't do enough, I should have done more. But in reality, as what you have just said, Jim, there is only so much we can do. You have to tell yourself you are trying the best you can. But you have to keep in mind, you need 6 to 8 hours sleep. You need to build in about 30 minutes a day to exercise. You need to spend some time prepare for your meals. You need to reach out. You need to learn something new, because without that, you will get brain fog, you will get tired. When you are tired, when you are brain fog, you cannot sleep well, you cannot concentrate well. So it's becoming a vicious cycle. So you have to stop for a second, even just 5 minutes, 10 minutes, lock yourself in a room, play some music. Peace and quiet is really good for your brain. You need to give your brain a break in order to be recharged.
So, like Aretha Franklin said, respect yourself.
Absolutely.
Also, it's kind of like the thing where the oxygen drops down in the airplane. You got to put it on yourself first before you can help anyone around you. We are running overtime, and thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Dr. Kate Zhong and Richard Lui. Thank you so much. This was great. We could go on another 3 hours, but then you wouldn't be following Dr. Kate's rule about sleep. So thank you all for being here, and I'll see you on King 5 evening, weeknights at 7:30. Thanks so much.